buenas tardes. El Convenio de Desempeño en Formación de Profesores de la Universidad de Playa Ancha saluda cordialmente a usted y agradece su presencia en esta actividad académica. Saludamos a las autoridades que hoy nos acompañan. Doctor Tito González, vicerrector académico de la Universidad. Doctora Marcela Lara Catalano, directora del Convenio de Desempeño en Formación de Profesores. Decano de la Facultad de Ciencias de la Actividad Física, Matías Marín. Decano de Arte, de la Facultad de Arte, con la Universidad de Playa. Señor Punya Mishra, académico y director de la Maestría en Arte en el Programa de Tecnología Educativa de la Universidad del Estado de Michigan. Autoridades de nuestra universidad, académicos y académicas, distinguidos invitados de las Fuerzas Armadas y de otras universidades y establecimientos educacionales de la región. Señoras y señores, el Convenio de Desempeño en Formación de Profesores tiene el agrado de presentar a ustedes la conferencia Profesores para la Educación del siglo XXI, Pedagogía y Contenido para integrar las TIC en las aulas. Esta será dictada por el doctor Punya Mishra, académico de Tecnología Educativa y director de la Maestría en Arte en el Programa de Tecnología Educativa de la Universidad del Estado de Michigan. El doctor Mishra es reconocido nacional e internacionalmente por su trabajo en los aspectos teóricos, cognitivos y sociales relacionados con el diseño y uso de entornos de aprendizaje basados en computadoras. Ha trabajado extensamente en el área de integración de la tecnología en la formación docente que llevó al desarrollo, en colaboración con MJ Keller, del marco pedagógico tecnológico Content Knowledge. De gran influencia en la formación de las nuevas generaciones de profesores alrededor del mundo, creadas a la necesidad del desarrollo de competencias en el uso de tecnología y su relación con los contenidos curriculares, la pedagogía y el valor que agregan a la enseñanza de cada materia. Ha publicado además más de 45 artículos y capítulos de libros y editado 2 libros. El doctor Mishra es un instructor premiado que imparte cursos tanto a nivel de maestría y doctorado en las áreas de la tecnología educativa, el diseño y la creatividad. Y además es también un consumado artista visual y poeta. Con ustedes entonces el doctor Mishra.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, which I think I understood 5 words of. But it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I usually start with this quote by Shaw, which when he found out that India and Britain were being joined by cable, he said that is very good, but what are they going to talk about? And I think that's a situation when we talk about technology very often, is that we have these tools and we often wonder what are we going to do with these things, you know, fancy phones or apps or internet or whatever. The second quote is from Theodore Nelson, where he talks about, he's the father of the idea of hypertext. Yeah, I need to figure out, is this volume too much, too low? It's okay? For the people, too many voices?
Yes, yes.
So do we alternate?
Yeah. With pauses. Yes. Pausa, una pausa. No tan
So what did we decide?
That's okay. I'll get to make it louder.
You have to make it louder.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So Theodore Nelson said that the technicalities matter a lot, but unifying vision matters even more. What he meant by that, I think, is that very often when we are talking about technology, we get caught up in which cable goes where, what is the Wi-Fi password. We get caught up in these technical things, and we don't think of the broader vision. So I'm hoping that today I will be able to offer a bit of that broader vision. A couple of thanks. First, the University de Playa Ancha for having me here today. I know my visit here was also sponsored by the UNESCO, by the University, as well as the Ministry of Education. You'll see that my slides are in Spanish. I do not know any Spanish, so some people help me do that. And the University in Santiago, so they translated all my words, and so I am doing a presentation which I cannot read, which he is converting into words, so I don't know what he's saying. So it's a very interesting situation, so I feel like my hands are very interested right here. But, you know, so it's almost like, why should I be here if you can talk and the slides can just go on, right?
No sé, entonces por qué estoy yo acá y el señor puede hablar y podemos dejar que la diapositiva hable solo.
So this is my first time in Chile, and I'm originally from India, and I live in the United States now. I'm a Christian. And when I was growing up, I remember this, my mother teaching me about geography, and we were looking at South America, and she said that this is this country, and it's very easy because the name resembles and looks like this. So I remember that very well. A little bit about myself and my dream. My dream is to be on The Simpsons. That's what I would look like if I was. But more seriously, I'm a professor at Michigan State University. We are a very highly ranked college of education. I direct the Master of Arts in Education Technology program over there. A lot of my work that I've done, for which you have invited me here to talk about, was done with my friend and colleague, and his name is Matt Taylor. He looks very cool with glasses. He looks very cool without glasses. And I think in some ways the work that Matt and I do is sort of a perfect union. And the analogy that I give is of a hot air balloon. For a hot air balloon to work, it needs two things. It needs hot air and it needs a ballast, a weight. And so in our relationship, I am the hot air and he's the ballast. And I mean that very seriously. I am the type of guy, I get excited, I get an idea in my head and I run around sharing it with people, great stuff. But often that times, like hot air, I need to go all over the place. Matt is methodologically very sound, very analytic, very grounded, so he keeps pulling me back from flying away. So we do most of our work in this building, in Erickson Hall, and that's us up there. Okay. Most of the time the work that we do has to do with technology in education. Specifically, we have focused a lot of our attention on this idea of what is it that teachers need to know to integrate technology in their teaching. One of the things that comes up with this very often is this idea of 21st century learning. Learning in the 21st century. And I heard this phrase many, many times, but I wasn't sure what it meant. So I did what any good scholar would do. I went to Google and I found 23 million. And most of them talk about this idea of a new learner, a learner who is connected, who has apps, devices, this, that, and the other. If you look at what it means for teachers, usually it will be about the latest technology. So whether it's a wiki or it's Word 2.0, Google Docs. So the lesson that I took away from this, because if you think about it, the 21st century is 100 years. We are only in 2014. So the lesson
Así que la lección entonces
is that all of 21st century learning will depend on technologies which are very new.
todo el aprendizaje de todo
I said that's a very stupid
va a
idea.
depender de lo que nosotros hagamos
So I went back
en los años. Entonces,
and I said, what would it look like if 20th century learning based on early 20th century technology? So here are some technologies that came out in the early 20th century. Right? So we have everything from radio, crayons, color photo, talking motion picture. And there was one technology that stood out. Crayons. That's an educational technology we still use today. It's a very nice technology. Children use it, old people use it, very good. But if I said that 20th century learning would depend upon the crayon, you would think that's a very stupid idea. Because a lot happens in 100 years. If you think in 1903, the Wright brothers flew for 45 seconds, an airplane. By 1950, grandmothers were flying across the ocean. So anything that is new today. So this is the future of 20th century learning. So I think when we talk about 21st century learning, we have to go beyond what is new and shiny right now. Because that should be the point. So we did a research project where we looked at trying to do a synthesis of what it means to our 21st century learning. We could not include all the hits in Google, but what we did was we took 15 major frameworks, books written by people, frameworks from OECD, ISTE, so on and so forth. Young Zhao's book is in there too. And we did this sort of conceptual analysis of this framework. So we have a very high-tech qualitative analysis lab at Michigan State. So we can do analysis of texts, and I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like that. So basically we took all these frameworks, cut them off pieces of paper, spread them, and argued and discussed about how they fit in, what kind of meaning emerges from them. So we came up with 3 key ideas. And so this is a synthesis of these 15 different frameworks. The first thing in 21st century learning clearly was this idea of foundational knowledge. That knowledge of the disciplines, of digital competence, and interdisciplinary knowledge. That knowledge of physics and math and art, engineering, whatever have you, will still be important in the future. It's not going to be all about this creativity and other things that way. So that's important. The next thing that came out is what we call meta-knowledge. This is how you act on that knowledge. So here we have things like creativity and innovation, problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. And the third thing that emerged from that is what we call humanistic knowledge. So this is sort of the values that we bring to the education process. And these have to do with life and job skills, emotional and ethical skills, moral judgment, cultural competency. We live in a global world now, and knowing how to interact and engage with people appropriately is very important. So the question is, what does this mean for educators? And the first thing that struck me when we had this framework emerge, that at some level, if I went back 100 years and talked to an educator, they wouldn't be surprised. In some ways, nothing had changed. Because teaching has always been about some foundational stuff, how to act on that knowledge and values that we bring. So that's a good thing to know, because sometimes we think of change and we think that, oh, we've got to throw everything out. Like, no, as educators, we are still deeply connected to these values and ideas that have gone on for hundreds of years. But at another level, lots of things have changed. So this is just half an hour of finding different icons on Google, right? That's the world that we live in. And this was brought home to me very strongly 2 days ago in Santiago. So people had told me that San Cristobal is a very beautiful place, you should go, I love doing photography, go there. So I go there and I go to the hotel and I say, I want a taxi driver who speaks English. So they found me Pablo who speaks no English. So we went on this adventure. And I want to show you what he did. Think about this. Growing up in India, living in the US, coming to Santiago, meeting this guy, and he pulls out a phone and he uses the internet. And so he's speaking in Spanish, I'm speaking in English, and we're talking to each other. What an amazing thing. Funny thing is, I met him this morning again when we were going. When we started talking, he has a website, he's a musician, he's a poet. This is 21st century. This is the only time in human history something like this could happen. So, nothing has changed, but at some level, some very fundamental changes are happening. Something has changed, there's no doubt. So, talking about technology, I think it's a question of how we frame the discussion. Because framing determines the kinds of questions we ask, the kinds of professional development we do, the kinds of teacher training we do. It determines how we spend our money. Money is always a resource. One of the things that Matt and I have criticized is what we call the technocentric frame, which puts technology in the center. I've spent a little bit of time questioning technocentrism from 3 different perspectives. The first is that technology changes at a very rapid rate. So if you want to train people and you train them in a certain set of tools, by the time they come to apply it or a few years go by, those tools are gone. So what you have to do is train for a mindset. And so that's sort of human evolution with technology. So this is a very interesting chart, which looks at humans and our changes with different technologies. And it does it by measuring it in terms of generations. So speech, which sets us apart from all the animals, is just 10,000 generations ago. The next big one, agriculture, with division of labor and so on. Writing, the ability to exchange ideas by scribbling on pieces of paper, but still only an elite majority have that till we come to printing. So it's no wonder that the textbook is the core thing that we still hold on to in our schools, right? So I was joking that when I first moved to the US, I used to love to go to these garage sales. People have little sales in their pavement, stuff they want to throw away. And I bought, for 25 cents, the Communist Manifesto. I said, this is very interesting that I am here in the headquarters of capitalism and I'm buying the Communist Manifesto. But if you think about it, those little black squiggles on pieces of dead tree have changed the lives of millions of people. It doesn't matter when you agree with the policies or you disagree. The fact is, those ideas have changed the lives of millions of people in the world. That's the power of print. The fact that we can distribute information easily. Now think of the internet. It's not a surprise that the American Revolution, French Revolution, Renaissance all happened 200 years or so after print was invented. So we may be living through some interesting times like that. Computers, 2 generations. Internet and email, 1 generation, and of course, this is what we live in. When you think of Web 2.0, user-generated content easily shareable. Some undergraduate student in Harvard creates a computer program that becomes Facebook. Some other guy says, what would happen if people would share 150, 140 characters with each other? That becomes Twitter. Neither of them thought of this. And that's what we do as humans. We take tools and we make them do interesting things. Again, it's not a judgment on the tools. When I was growing up in India, this is how information is looked after. I used to go 1.5 hours in a bus with these big bags of books to the British Council and the USIS library once a month. I used to love to read and then come back, the next month go again. That's a very different world. This is how information comes at us today. So it's not about seeking information, it is about filtering information. And if you're an educator and information is coming like this, you often feel like this. So that's a sculpture at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. And I went back there again in winter, and he was still there. So, the second question of technocentrism is that we need to rethink how we frame or think about technology. So, what is an educational technology? Crayon, Wikipedia, book, CD-ROM, video game, magnifying glass. Matt and I argue that there is no such thing as an educational technology. That there are technologies in the world out there, and as educators, our job is to see them and repurpose them, think of ways of incorporating them in our teaching, right? This is a scientific calculator. How many of you have seen a teenage boy or girl carrying this around in their back pocket? No, because it's a single function device. Now, this, you will see them. But what is this? Is this an MP3 player? Is it a device for watching YouTube videos, for playing video games, for texting, for chatting? And also, a scientific calculator. So it becomes this interesting thing that this tool was not designed for education, but it is there everywhere. Let's switch a little bit here. So one of the problems that we have is that most technologies are not designed for education. But here is the positive. As users, we are always redefining technology. So if you want to keep that door open, you would take a chair and put it there. The chair was not designed for that. We don't even think twice about it. We just do it. So my favorite example is email. How many people here have sent an email to themselves? Very strange group of people. It's for communicating with other people. But we all do it. And we do it because we want to send a file home to work on it, we want to keep a backup, we want to PCC. Right? So that's that approach, that we think about technologies not for what they are meant by the designer, but what we want to do with it. So I collect examples from around the world. This is from Cuba. This is a Chinese restaurant where they keep track of orders using clothespins. Works. This is from India, and it's called a Maruta, and it's basically you take parts from different cars and trucks and you tie it together and it goes at 5 kilometers per hour, and then a piece falls off, then you go to the junkyard and get another piece. It works. Why is this important? If there's one thing I want you guys, want all of you to take away from this, it's this one. That it's only repurposing. It's reimagining the purpose that makes a technology an educational technology. Because the right tool, if you go looking for the right tools, you will never find it. But there are lots of possibilities and potentials there which we can use. Like this is a terrible tool to teach math. But lots of teachers use Microsoft Excel because it's on every computer. The cells are too small, there are too many options, but it's there. And now it will be Google Spreadsheets because it's free. And this idea of repurposing is creative and an innovative act. I think that's really important to understand. So I've argued for two reasons. One is that technology changes very quickly. Second, that we need to rethink technology and think of repurposing. The third argument against technocentrism, and I think maybe the most important one, is that if we focus on the technology, we miss the two most important things. The content that has to be taught and the pedagogical approach that we take to teach that content. Now, technology changes how we teach. One of the biggest innovations in educational technology in my lifetime is this one. The fact that a child in Valparaiso, in Budapest, in Zambia, in India, in East Lansing can access more human knowledge than was ever possible before. That's a ridiculously amazing thing. I mean, we should wake up every morning just going, whoa, this is crazy, right? Now, of course, people say that some of this information, you don't know who has written it, you don't know whether it's credible. That's fine. That means we need to teach our students how to think critically, how to evaluate the information, how to question the text. That doesn't mean let's not think about Google, it means let's think about Google intelligently. So this brings me to Punya's 23rd law of parenting. And if you think there are 22 other laws, no, I like prime numbers, so that's why, 23. So this is with my kids. For facts, go to Google. For wisdom, come to me. Okay? So I think that's sort of a changing role that as a parent I can make, and as a teacher and as an educator that we can do. If you combine Google with MIT OpenCourseWare, resources like Khan Academy, Web 2.0, online learning, which is growing really fast in the US and also shared here. And then we have this phenomena called massively open online courses, the MOOCs, which Harvard or other places offer. Thousands of students sign up. MOOCs. So when you think about this is the context that we are in, it changes how we teach. It has to. It cannot not change. But technology also, and I think this is very important, changes what we teach. Content itself gets transformed. If you look at any field of human activity, look at journalism, completely transformed due to the technologies that we have. Music, engineering, medicine. I have a friend who is an astronomer. I don't think he has looked at a telescope in 20 years. What he does, he buys time on Hubble or some telescope, gets terabytes of data, which he then puts on his computer to make these models. So how astronomy is done has changed. So if you want our kids to become astronomers, or musicians or mathematicians, we have to think about how technology has impacted that. Technology has always influenced or changed subject matter. Here is my favorite example. So this is the periodic table of elements. You see the two rows below. Those are the lanthanide and actinide series. They should actually fit in the middle of the table. The table should look like this. But if you go to any lab or you look at any textbook, that's what we see. Why? Guess.
Because it fits in the online web page.
On a page, no, printed page. Book, just to fit in a book. And if in a book, and chemists love to pack information into those cells. So if you have a cell table which is this long, your cells become very small. Or you have to print as a flap, fold out, which costs money. So chemists are fine, like, yeah, we know what this is, they put it outside. The problem is, children have a really hard time, and there is research to show that they have a really hard time understanding this. So this is a great example of how the technology of print constrained scientific representation. The funny thing is chemists create all kinds of periodic tables. There are 450 or more correct representations. These are not wrong. But now that we have the internet, the web, you can go and you can find these, you can look across them, which in a printed book was hard to do. So that's how technology can transform subject matter itself. So far I've talked about content, technology, and pedagogy. But these don't happen in a vacuum. So they happen in specific contexts. So if you are a teacher and you have to take some decision on teaching something, if you are in a situation where every child has a device, a laptop or something, that's very different from this classroom in India, where you go to the lab twice a week. Electricity may or may not be there, internet may or may not be there. If you want to teach photosynthesis, you're going to do something very different in this class than in the previous class. Or in this class, where you have these devices where you take pictures, share video. That's a very different context. And the pedagogical decisions will change. And when we say context, it would also mean broader social context. This is an interesting one, where Denmark allowed students to use the internet during their state exams. Now tell me, what do you think will happen if you allow that? What will you have to do? You will have to change the questions you ask. You cannot ask what is the capital of Madagascar. You have to ask questions which have to do with interpretation, which have to do with critical thinking. And this is what the minister said a few months after the tried it out. That the kinds of questions we ask have to change. So, we have these three pieces of knowledge that work in a specific context, but we cannot see them in isolation of each other. We have to see them as overlapping in some way. So that is the heart of the TPAC model. It's technology, pedagogy, and content that work together, not independent from each other. And then it works within specific contexts. So, we were not very imaginative in the beginning, so we just called it the TPCK framework, the technological, pedagogical, content knowledge. So people ask questions like this, because there was no vowel in it. There's the toothpick model, what is this? So, there's this game show, what is that game show where to figure out the words by guessing? Wheel of Fortune? So how many people know Wheel of Fortune? Is that the word guessing game on TV?
Full of it.
Is
Ah, la
there a
full
version
of it.
there?
español.
Hmm?
El programa que está y hay que
You have to guess like the words, right? You spin this thing and for
No
$50.
siquiera es una rueda, pero es una palabra y uno tiene que imaginar cuál es la palabra es, ¿no?
Yeah, so in that, if you pay $50, you can buy a vowel.
Entonces, y si te compras con $50, no puedes comprar una vocal, ¿no?
So we bought a vowel,
Entonces compramos una vocal.
and so the TPC gave framework to get the
Y ahora
TPC.
tenía una vocal, entonces.
It's the bad joke.
And
At least now you can say it, you know.
Ahora podríamos por lo menos pronunciarlo.
So one way of thinking about it is sort of the total package
Entonces,
of
vamos
the
a ver
knowledge
cuál es el contenido
that an educator needs to have, right?
Educación que nosotros tendríamos que incluir.
I want to be very clear about one thing,
Entonces, hay que ser tanto eso, el tema.
that when we say technology,
Sí,
we
cuando
don't necessarily mean
necesariamente significa entonces
the latest digital tool.
la última herramienta.
Paper and pencil,
También el papel, el lápiz,
whiteboard, blackboard,
una pizarra,
textbooks, these are all technologies.
también son tecnologías.
These are technologies because they're not natural kinds, they don't grow on
No
a tree,
son cosas naturales que no sabe hardware, ¿no?
right? Except that those have become transparent to us. We have gotten used
A
to
excepción que
it,
sí
right?
han sido transparentes con nosotros. La gente
But
enfrentada
if you see it in that way, then all teachers have always, whether you use a chalkboard or you use a website or a computer, we've always been about something that needs to be taught, some pedagogical approaches we have,
algo para enseñar mediante una forma
some technologies and tools we have of conveying these ideas.
que nos ha permitido enseñar todo.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This part is to make me feel good about the fact that people are reading our work, so I can skip that.
Hacer sentir bien de lo que necesita la gente para su trabajo.
So, first article 2006, there is a handbook,
Manual,
a lot of people cite us, a lot of organizations love us. This one is kind of interesting. The entire continent of Australia, they have like 41 teacher education colleges, took on TPAC as a framework for teacher preparation, so which I think made us feel very good. This is actually more important. If you're interested in finding out more, my colleague Matt maintains the tpac.org website. If you're a scholar or a researcher or a graduate student, there's a regular newsletter which you can sign up for. It's archived on my website. This doesn't mention it, but there is a Mendeley bibliography right now, which is free and public. I think I saw it a month ago. There are more than 950 articles related to TPAC. So I'm going to skip through some of this and get to the important stuff. So there's been a lot of research on TPAC and how teachers develop it and so on. And I think there are some positive trends in that which I want to highlight. In 2007, 2008, there were only 10% of the articles were on pre-service teachers. Most of it was for in-service. There's a big shift in the research there, the big growth in the pre-service area, which I think is really good. Some in higher ed. The last one is that in the beginning there was a lot of discussion about what are the components of the framework, how does it work, this, that, and the other. A lot of theory. That has dropped quite a bit, which to me means that we are developing a consensus about what this thing is, so that we are not fighting over it all that much. That the field is maturing. I think that's so for me, though, as director of the master's program, as somebody who works with teachers, it's the pragmatic that is most important. And I think the TPAC framework has a very clear consequence for what we should not do. And it says that we should not train teachers, we should not do professional development where these three pieces are separate from each other. I don't know about here, but in schools in the US, a lot of times when there is a professional development day for technology, teachers are asked to come in and they are told about some software. Okay, we'll learn about wikis. Tomorrow we'll teach you how to build a website with no connection to what they're teaching, what grade level, anything like that. And that kind of professional development has been shown over and over again to fail. What does work is when we provide environments for teachers to explore technology-related content in integrated ways, through rich case studies, through small projects, design projects, has a lot more potential for growth in them. But I think the really most important thing with technology is this sort of that it allows us sometimes to break out of the box and be transformational in what we do. For the longest time, we thought about using technology. I think we've spent quite some time thinking about technology integration. I think it's time that we start thinking a little bit about innovative technology. What can be done? Because technology, I think, can help us see the world in new ways. However, only if we see technology the right way. So, I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first one is a high school in Italy that where the students computed the distance to the moon. And they did that using freely available MP3 of the conversation between mission control and Neil Armstrong when the man first landed on the moon. Sometimes when you make a long distance phone call, you get an echo of your voice going and coming back. If you go listen to the actual recordings, there is an echo. So if you find the gap between the first voice and the echo, you get a duration. So the question is, how do we measure that? How many of you know what Audacity is, the software program Audacity? Okay, a couple of people, yeah, a few people. And Audacity is basically a sound manipulation program. It's like Photoshop for sound. Lets you, clean up sound, it lets you make echoes, make funky effects, podcasting, whatever. What is interesting about what this teacher did is that they made Audacity into a data analysis tool. Because you could zoom in and you could actually look at the difference between the echo and the voice. After that, divided by 2 and multiplied by speed of light, that's the distance. That's very simple. But the fact that they could get to the level of accuracy, because the moon doesn't go in a perfect circle. Sometimes it's further from the earth, sometimes it's closer. They could actually tell when the moon was closer and further away. Very interesting. And for me, it's the repurposing of Audacity as a data analysis tool, which is the little piece of creativity by the teacher. I just going to get a sense of time. We're 3:55 right now. But how much time do we have? No, I know. I just want to know.
No problem.
4:30, 4:15. 4:30 is okay. I mean, I can go on and on. I'm a professor. They pay me money to get so, cobwebs will be here, people's and I'll be going on. So, the second example is a very different way of thinking about mathematics. So, if you interview mathematicians or talk to them about their work, they don't sit like this and talk. They wave their hands, they move their bodies. This year, the first woman to ever win a Fields Medal in mathematics, an Iranian mathematician. Go online and look her up. The way she does mathematics is she spreads large sheets of paper on the ground and she draws. She doesn't put any equations, nothing, she draws. Different surfaces, lines, this, that. Till something clicks. Ah. And then she starts doing the So for many mathematicians, math is not equations, it's body. Meaning is developed through kinesthetics. And I don't think we give kids in our school enough opportunity to think of math like that. So these are these free apps on the internet which have a different way of thinking about mathematical function. And there are articles which have talked about children talking about after playing with them where they say this function has a personality. That's an interesting way of thinking of a function. This is the Xbox and the Kinect. The Kinect, actually you can plug into your laptop. And now this group in Washington has developed these free software for the PC. When you plug in your Kinect and you walk towards it, it will graph your velocity, your distance. Simple things, right? However, these are hard for students to understand. You know, so the third example, this is sort of a new thing that's coming along, but it's getting cheaper. The idea of printing 3D. So that's really interesting because so far we've gone into the world of bits. You know, whether it's sound, whether it's image, whether it's video, we digitize things and then we manipulate them. And now we can go the other way. We can go back to atoms. So you can design mathematical shapes, visualize things, and print them. We just bought 2 of these for our for my department. I think it was like $800. So not very cheap. But the first, you know, laptop computer or the first Macintosh was $3,000. You know, and we have more computing power in this now than what was on the board. So I think there's a lot of interesting potential for transforming how we think about geometry, and mathematics, and art. Okay, so this is the question to ask yourself, right? Each one of us. Would this have been possible 100 years ago? Or 10? Or 5? But maybe the more important question, and that's the world that our kids, our children are going to grow up in. That's the world where if you're a teacher preparation program that your graduates are going to work in, yes, we can keep doing things the way we have. But then we are not taking advantage of some really powerful ways of thinking, of engaging with ideas. So one of the important things is how do we learn to see in the world in new ways? And that's where creativity comes out. And so I'm going to speak a little bit. This is my current work, what I do, research on is on creativity, specifically teacher creativity. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. There's a famous quote by William James that psychology is a science and teaching is an art. It's a pretty common saying. What's less common is the second part of what he says. Where he says that art doesn't automatically come out of a science.
no
It
es
requires
automático, digamos, ¿no? Como una
an
ciencia.
intermediary
Hay,
mind.
hay como una parte intermedia aquí, ¿no?
And so in teaching, the intermediary mind,
Y en la
Is the
enseñanza
teacher.
también, obviamente
We
que
can train
hay
them in the
un
psychology of
intermedio,
learning.
que es el profesor.
all the sciences and all the stuff. But what happens in the classroom is an art, it's a craft. So you have to train teachers for that. That intermediary invented mind. Can you read that?
Creativity.
Okay, watch this. That cool? I like the way he captures my tone also. Now you have to translate that too.
Do I?
So, these are called ambigrams.
Se llaman amigramas, ¿no?
So I make these for fun.
Bueno, yo le hice todo.
I'm sharing a few with you.
Para entusiasmarme, digamos, y compartirlo con ustedes solamente, ¿no?
So every once in a while in the US, everybody gets panicky about there's no more creativity, you know.
Uno va, dice, cada vez.
And there is some evidence to show that because of lots and lots of testing that we are doing with our students today, in the US there's a big push towards standardized assessment. There are some longitudinal studies that show that creativity actually is going down. So that's a scary thing. Just gonna skip some so that I can. Okay. I'm not used to this dynamic, so I have to think of the time a little bit. So unimportant stuff can go. So the big thing in creativity is where do new ideas come from. And who better to answer that than Mr. Jobs himself, right? And he said, creativity is just connecting things. So, if you hear that, my response was that. That's simple? Really? Then we'd all be Steve Jobs, right? But that's not true. So, this is Maria Popova. She runs a website called Brain Pickings. If you are interested in creativity, I really recommend signing up for a newsletter. So she says that the creative process will never be easy. That crux of combinatorial creativity, of putting ideas together, that magic moment when ideas click, it cannot be forced. So what are we as educators to do if we can't, right? Then she goes on to say, we can optimize our minds. We can create situations and contexts which support and nurture creativity. And we do that by enriching our mental pool of resources with a variety of experiences. So in this idea, creativity is the ability to cross across disciplines, take ideas from one and put it in another. And we sort of half-jokingly call it indisciplined learning. I don't know if it translates to Spanish as, because indiscipline is like a bad thing in school. So art and science, foundation and creativity have to come together. So here are a few examples. So this is Alexander Fleming, the discoverer of penicillin. That soldier over there is actually painted with bacteria. So Fleming with microbes. Fleming is to love, to play with them, and this is transparent. So you paint, put it in the oven, bring it out, see what happens, put it again.
lectura, digamos, para poder ver en transparencia cuál es la parte que tenía.
So he says that it is
Entonces,
this continuous playing and knowing microbes really
que
well
esto que está, efectivamente está
that allowed him to see
más avanzando,
something special one day which became innocent.
algo específico que en algún momento le iba a ayudar.
Other scientists had seen that, but they hadn't seen it
Y
because they
la
didn't
verdad
know, they hadn't played with the
que
microbes.
si no hubiese jugado con las bacterias de esta manera, nunca habría podido llegar al resultado que logró.
Nikola Tesla,
Y Nikola Tesla,
amazing engineer, and he
que
could
es un ingeniero,
imagine machines in his head.
que se imaginó.
I wonder about whether we give children
No sé,
an opportunity to
si le
play,
damos a los niños la oportunidad de
an
jugar,
opportunity to
de
imagine
imaginar
in our classrooms today.
en nuestras clases, en nuestras salas de clases.
This is a really long quote, so I won't
Y
read the
esto
whole
es
thing,
una cita enorme que la
especially since it's in Spanish and I can't.
no la quiero leer, particularmente porque en castellano no entiendo nada.
So this is Boltzmann,
Así
who's
que
reading
Boltzmann,
Maxwell's equations of gases.
que escribió entonces las ecuaciones de gases de Max.
I just want you to pay attention to the bold words
Que pongan atención.
and see how he's talking about math and physics
¿De qué manera hablaba de
in musical terms.
¿no? En términos músicos.
How often do we allow our students opportunity to see the connection between music and
que
mathematics?
utilicen la música en las matemáticas?
It's not that the transfer happens only from the arts to the sciences, it goes the other way as well. So this is a representation of like higher dimensions, you know, line, square, cube, fourth dimensional cube, and so on. And look at that amazing painting by Salvador Dali, where you have two-dimensional squares, you have cubes, you have the fourth dimensional cube, as a way of making a metaphor between the material and the spiritual. It's math and art together. So this idea of thinking across disciplines, you know, clearly lots of scientists do it, mathematicians, so on and so forth do it. What does it mean for us as teachers? There's some research to show that the most creative people in the sciences and engineering, Nobel Prize winners, members of National Academy of Sciences, when you talk to them, they'll tell you that they have interests outside of the field, and those interests fuel their creativity in their field. So one of my students and I, a few years back, we said, is this true of teachers? Where do teachers get their creative ideas from? So what we did is we did a research study which is in press right now. If you want a copy, I can send you a copy. We interviewed 8 people who were winners of the Teachers of the Year award in the US. This is a national level search. Happens in every state. You get 50 Teachers of the Year from the state. Then the competition goes on. You have 4. It's like Survivor for good people. So finally, one person is the Teacher of the Year, goes to the White House, shakes hands with Obama. So we interviewed these people to ask them where their creative ideas come from, what their outside interests are, if there are any connections. I'm not going to go on and on with this, but each of these people had these outside interests. One was trained as a graphic designer and uses that in teaching mathematics. One of them loves music, so he raps. You can actually look him up, he's got a rapping mathematician. Alex Calitani, really interesting. So it goes on and on that way. And the title of
título
the dissertation
el
became,
título de esta tesis, digamos,
we teach who we are.
era decir, nosotros enseñamos lo que somos.
So she says, whatever it is that interests you,
¿Cuál sería el interés?
that energy manifests itself
En que la energía se
in the fabric
manifiesta
of the class.
sola, digamos, en el tejido total de la clase.
So we ask them, in your teacher preparation program,
Su programa de capacitación o de formación,
where you ever ask about what your outside interests are and how that can feed into your teaching.
si tenía algún interés además de la enseñanza y si de qué manera lo podía conectar con la enseñanza.
And the answer was no.
Y la respuesta fue nunca.
So coming back to
Entonces,
technology,
volviendo entonces a la tecnología,
I already said this, that only repurposing
creo
makes a
que
technology and education
que solo reimaginar el propósito hace y que esto sea posible.
And this repurposing is a creative and an innovative act.
El propósito es un acto creativo y es innovador.
So think about these examples that I just
en los ejemplos
mentioned.
que ya les he mencionado.
Distance to the moon,
La estación de la columna,
kinesthetic mathematics, 3D printing.
la
Unless you have a
física, es decir, a menos,
Across these fields, there's no way you can be creative.
no sé, uno puede tener algún sentimiento más o menos, entonces no hay manera de poder imaginarse perfectamente.
So again,
Así que
the
bueno,
framework,
nuevamente entonces tenemos este marco y encontrar entonces este equilibrio. ¿Y
because,
por qué?
as Pastor said,
Porque como dijo Pasteur,
chance
el
favors
azar
a prepared mind.
favorece a una mente preparada.
So we cannot
Así
predict
que no podemos
a
predecir
creative solution,
una solución creativa.
but we can prepare our minds as well as
Nos
those of our
podemos
children
preparar nosotros y a los niños
for that.
para ello.
And you know, I talked about
Hemos hablado muchísimo
interdisciplinary,
de
cross-disciplinary
la
thinking.
disciplina y del trabajo interdisciplinario, pasar de una a otra.
Now, in contrast, this is really sad. This is what's the situation
la situación que
in the United
encontramos en
States.
Estados Unidos,
Increased testing,
en que hay muchas
distrust of teachers.
hay desacreditación de los profesores,
So, which instead of enhancing, actually is reducing creativity, I would say.
obviamente en vez de ayudarnos vamos para atrás,
This is where I live.
y esto es donde yo vivo.
My university is in East Lansing. This is Lansing. It's like a
Universidad
neighboring
de
district right across.
digamos que está justamente ya cruzando, ¿no?
87 jobs were
La
cut.
hablaría, digamos, ¿no?
Jobs get cut all the time.
No sé, profesores que se quedan sin trabajo, los trabajos están cada día más recortados.
All 87 jobs were in arts, music, and PE, physical education.
En música y en educación física se recorta.
And all my reading
Y
has taught me is one thing, that if you want to create good engineers, you want to create good mathematicians, good computer scientists, the arts have to play a role.
El arte tiene.
And so it's very tragic that in the short-sighted thing of that, oh, we need to improve STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, I think we are harming it in the long term.
Estamos obviamente en términos finales dañando la creatividad.
All right, so summing up,
Y para resumir un poco entonces,
we live in a new ecology
vivimos en una nueva ecología
where there are no standard
donde
solutions.
no hay soluciones estándar,
It is about creativity,
es un mundo de creatividad
and we get there
y llegamos aquí
not by magic,
no por magia,
but in a playful process
sino que en un proceso lúdico
of repurposing existing tools.
de herramientas existentes para reimaginar el propósito.
At some level, it is not about the
Es
technology.
decir, en algún nivel no estamos hablando de
Because those elements that are important to teaching and learning have helped you for a long time.
Obviamente que nos ha servido durante mucho tiempo.
And funnily enough, at some level, it is about the technology.
Muy divertido, en algún
It's
nivel
knowing when and which, right?
sí es de tecnología, es cuándo ocuparla.
We talked about this,
Hemos hablado de esto,
talked about this, and
también de
this,
esto y de esto
and that.
y de esto.
So I actually have
Así que
2 short videos,
tengo
and I want to
dos
get the
videitos.
time if we should or we should not. If you're not,
Deberíamos
we
de
can
mostrarnos
one.
o no nos mostramos, son cortitos.
See,
Bien,
we shall do that.
lo hacemos.
So a few years back, somebody sent me a commercial, that was on TV. They sent me the YouTube link, and I saw that, and something bothered me. And being a good academic, I wrote a blog post about it with correct citations and everything. And my friend said, Punya, that's a video works on your emotions. You use the drama, and you are writing a blog post. Then battle, you lost the battle before it even started. So I decided to make a mashup of the commercial. So first, we'll watch the commercial. You might have to translate over it. I can turn the volume down a little bit.
I stand before you today to apologize. The system has failed. I have failed. I have failed to help you share your talent with the world, and the world needs talent more than ever. It is being wasted every day by an educational system steeped in tradition and old times. It was time for a new tradition.
So the commercial basically making the argument that technology is rewriting the rules of education, and there's this guy who's giving this lecture which can be seen on little devices and everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I switched it off. Yes, better. So that was the commercial. And now my mashup.
Podríamos hacer un comercial súper chorito. Con gente muy bravosa. Con un presupuesto enorme. Salen todos los horarios.
A system steeped in tradition and old ideas.
¿Cuál sería la solución? ¿Cuál sería la novedad? Imagínense. Es tiempo de una charla. Es tiempo de que nos demos cuenta que una charla es una charla. Sea en un computador o en un iPod. O en algún juego de video. Una charla es una charla, sea en la cocina o incluso en el techo. Dense cuenta de qué manera la tecnología cambia. Hay muchas más cosas al mismo tiempo, pero una charla sigue siendo una charla. Pero acuérdense, es el tiempo de ustedes. Úsenlo con sabiduría. Acuérdense, la tecnología lo cambia todo. Cambia lo que enseñamos, cómo lo enseñamos. No se sienten a escuchar una charla. Sean creativos, compártanla. Este mensaje fue entregado para ustedes por PEPAC.
Thank you. Thank you. I ended that video with these three words. And these are the three words that are sort of the motto or slogan of the master's program that I direct. That the first step towards becoming a creative educator is exploring, is trying, willing to play, risking failure, You have to do that.
Darse la posibilidad de fracaso, etc. Hay que buscarlo.
However, just merely playing or exploring is not enough. You have to use that to create something. Might be a lesson plan, might be a unit, might be a website, whatever. Make something. Build something. And finally, share it with the world. Because we get a lot from people who have gone before us, who have done work and put it out there. That's how we grow. And even in a small way, if you're putting things back, I think you're contributing to a larger conversation. So in our master's program, almost all the work that the students do is completely public. I'm teaching a course right now. Students don't submit any work to me. I see their work, I evaluate it. All the work is hosted publicly on their website. It makes the work, their approach much more serious. Because people will see that. If you're a teacher, your parent or your classroom is going to Google, you will find that. You better do a good job. But the pressure is also on me, that I give them assignments that are worthy. If I give them something stupid to do, it reflects badly on me. So all of us are in this cycle, right? So explore, create, share. So in terms of new ideas, let me see if you can read that word. Art, okay. Science. Now watch. So thank you so much. I have a small little gift. I don't know if it's a gift, but whatever.
Chile.
Guess what will happen? So I started with these two quotes. Hopefully I've been able to give a little bit of insight. And my goal is not to give answers. It's to hopefully provide a way of thinking, a perspective on how to think about technology and tools, what we do when India and Britain are joined by cable, what do we talk about? And hopefully set a conversation which is more than the technical, but offers a more productive vision. That's my contact information. Always available by email, Facebook, Twitter. So again, thank you so much.
Agradecemos particularmente al doctor Mishra por la interesante y fundamental temática abordada esta tarde. La directora del Convenio de Desempeño, le da un obsequio al doctor.
Bueno, en nombre del rector de la Universidad de Playa Ancha queremos agradecer la presencia hoy día de nuestro ponencista, agradecer la alta convocatoria que hemos tenido en esta tarde. Esperamos que no sea la última vez que nos visite en esta maravillosa universidad que está preocupada de hacer cambios sucesivos en la formación de profesores, ¿ya? de manera creativa, abierta, democrática, pluralista y con calidad, que eso es lo importante. Obsequios que tienen que ver con Valparaíso, fotografías de hace más de 20 años atrás, y también por nuestro gran poeta Pablo Neruda, que sabemos que es uno de los poetas favoritos de nuestros expositores. Muchas gracias.
Dejamos abierto el espacio para preguntas, si es que hay alguna. ¿Se escucha? Pueden hacer preguntas si quieren. Parece que no. Entonces le damos las gracias nuevamente al profesor por su presencia y por su charla. Un gran aplauso para él.